By the end of Avengers Infinity War, we had said goodbye to many of our beloved heroes, but based on some comments by Chris Evans, it seems we may be losing Steve Rogers for good. Losing Captain America would be a huge blow to the MCU, but who among our existing cast of heroes would be able to take his place? Before we share our predictions with you, make sure to click that subscribe button and ring that gray bell to join our notification squad, so you never miss any of our MCU videos here at CBR. While we won't say we weren't saddened by the finale of Infinity War, we left the theater knowing that we hadn't really said goodbye for good to half the MCU lineup. First of all, we know that Marvel Studios likes few things better than pulling the old dead character is secretly alive switcheroo. Even in the beginning of the movie, Thor made a comment about how he believed Loki was dead for good this time. Even the God of Thunder is growing tired of this trope. But that doesn't mean things aren't going to change, and we have good reason to believe we will be losing at least one of our beloved Avengers. Actor Chris Evans has been clear that he's always seen an end in sight when it comes to his role as Steve Rogers. He once commented that he would want to get off the train before they push him off. That, coupled with the fact that his Marvel contract ends after Avengers 4, had fans getting ready to say goodbye to Steve Rogers. To further cement this theory, Evans tweeted that filming had wrapped on Avengers 4, and that he was thankful for the memories he had shared with the cast and crew over the past 8 years. So, if we assume based on this evidence that Steve Rogers won't be surviving the events of Avengers 4, the next question is, what comes next? Captain America is an iconic character for many reasons, and he's closely tied in with the image of America itself. When the death of Captain America was released in the comics, even non-comic book fans couldn't stop talking about it. Sure, we eventually learned he wasn't really dead because of reasons, but it was still a huge event. While Captain America was dead in the comics, his old pal Tony Stark received a letter from the late Rogers. The letter revealed that Rogers firmly believed the legacy of Captain America was too important to die with him, and Stark shows the letter to Bucky Barnes. The two agree with Rogers, and it's decided that Barnes will take up the mantle of Captain America. For this reason, it's easy to point to Bucky Barnes as a stand-in for Steve Rogers. After all, these two were best friends long before they were superheroes, and they've been through so much together. But there's another character who may be a contender if we're going off the events of the comics. Sam Wilson, better known as Falcon, also took over for Steve Rogers. In the comics, Rogers lost his super soldier serum, making him just another mere mortal and one who was quite old. While the mind was willing, the body was weak, so the shield and moniker were passed over to Falcon. Having Falcon become Captain America would really shake things up in the MCU. But there are just some things about these easy answers that we can't get past. Sure, both Barnes and Falcon were Captain America at various points in the comics, but their MCU counterparts are so different. In the comic books, Wilson and Rogers have spent tons of time together, and we've seen Wilson earn his chance to wield the mighty shield. But in the MCU, Falcon has been a grossly underutilized character, and he's definitely nowhere near ready to step into the position. We just don't think Falcon would be a good fit, at least not how he's presented in the MCU so far. And then we have Bucky Barnes, Steve Rogers' best friend, who seems like the logical choice for his replacement. After all, there was a time when Barnes was a high-ranking officer, and Rogers wasn't even allowed to enlist in the army. But for the majority of his time in the MCU, he's been a villain. Sure, when he was the Winter Soldier, he wasn't really himself, but he still committed no shortage of horrible atrocities. Rogers may have been willing to forgive his friend, but would others have had the same outlook? We know that Barnes is fine now, and has even been rebranded as the heroic White Wolf, but that hardly means he's ready to become Captain America. Steve Rogers was just an average guy with a selfless nature, who got injected with a super serum. Barnes, on the other hand, is a trained assassin with a long and storied history. These two are far from interchangeable, and we think MCU Barnes as Cap would be a bad fit. At the end of the day, the reason Captain America has always captivated audiences is because he does much more than simply beat up bad guys. There's a reason why they used him instead of Tony Stark to film PSAs for students during Spider-Man Homecoming. Steve Rogers is a man of conviction, who's able to act with an extreme amount of selflessness. Avengers Infinity War is actually one of the best examples of the morals and values of Steve Rogers. Being a superhero means having to make the tough decisions, and Rogers tells Vision that they don't trade lives. This becomes a huge theme in the movie, and really highlights what makes Rogers such an exceptional character. In many ways, he's the complete opposite of the Mad Titan Thanos, and Infinity War makes this abundantly clear. When trying to justify his quest for the Infinity Stones, Thanos claims he's acting for the greater good. According to him, with limited resources, it's only a matter of time before life life in the universe begins to suffer and die out. But by simply snapping his fingers and wiping out half of all life in advance, the survivors will have a much better quality of life and enjoy longevity of their species. While Captain America insists heroes don't trade lives, that's exactly what Thanos' plan is. He wants to trade one half of all life in the universe for the other half. We even see Thanos murder his favorite daughter Gamora in order to acquire the Soul Stone, essentially trading her life for the stone. In comparison, we have Captain America's effort to protect the Mind Stone. At one point, Rogers can either rip the Mind Stone from Vision, which would kill him, but prevent Thanos from getting the stone, or protect Vision and risk Thanos getting the stone. Essentially, Rogers was asked to trade Vision's life for the Mind Stone, and thus, other lives, and he refused. Sacrificing innocent people isn't something heroes do, as far as Rogers is concerned. And not only does this put him at odds with Thanos, but his fellow heroes as well. Doctor Strange is a hero, but he doesn't follow this philosophy. He straight up tells Tony Stark that he would sacrifice both him and Peter Parker if it meant protecting the Time Stone. Eventually, he handed over the Time Stone to spare Tony's life, but we don't think this was out of the goodness of his heart. When Strange looked into the future, we're guessing he realized Stark is integral to stopping Thanos. Him handing over the Time Stone wasn't him refusing to trade lives, but rather, it was a tactical concession in order to ensure a later victory. But for Rogers, his decision to protect Vision was strictly him upholding his code of ethics. He and Vision aren't particularly close, and even fought on opposite sides during Captain America's Civil War. But Rogers was willing to risk his own life and those of his friends in order to stay true to his ideals. That's the sort of act few heroes are capable of, and illustrates why Captain America is so much more than just a guy with a shield. Sure, Barnes or Wilson could wear the costume and be called Captain America, but would that really be enough? We can only speculate about what'll happen during Avengers 4, but we have some thoughts. It's reasonable to assume that somehow our heroes will be able to undo the damage done by Thanos during Infinity War. After all, while we don't expect Captain America to survive, Marvel definitely wouldn't kill off so many lucrative franchises in one fell swoop. Sacrifice was a major theme during Infinity War, and we wouldn't be surprised to find the idea come into play during the following movie as well. If Rogers was faced with the idea of sacrificing someone in order to save the day, would he be able to? The only life this super soldier would be willing to sacrifice would be his own, which we're guessing is how he'll finally meet his end. So, where does that leave us? Sure, we would be missing the actual hero called Captain America, but there's so much more at stake. The earnestness and heroism of Captain America are timeless, and they provide a stark contrast, no pun intended, to Tony Stark's cynicism. Stark uses his technology to save him from himself, but Rogers finds his heroism in saving others. When faced with what current MCU hero would be able to fill the void left by Captain America, we have to say the answer is no one. But don't despair quite yet, because we do have some ideas about who may be on their way to fill in. One of the comic book characters we're excited to see on the big screen is Captain Marvel. In the comic books, Captain America is the one who encourages Carol Danvers to call herself Captain in the first place. Within the MCU, we expect Captain Marvel to be a major player. During the post-credit scene in Avengers Infinity War, we saw Nick Fury attempting to contact her, and of course, we know she's getting her very own film. As we get ready for Avengers 4, Marvel Studios is ready for the fourth phase in the MCU, which is really going to shake up their cinematic universe. We think Captain Marvel would be a great candidate to fill the void for Captain America. There's only one Steve Rogers, and we think he's irreplaceable. But in terms of his values and unflagging courage, we really think Captain Marvel could step up and fulfill his role in the MCU. It's no wonder that Steve Rogers thought so highly of Carol Danvers, since the two of them do have a ton in common. Danvers also enlisted in the military, signing up for the Air Force as soon as she turned 18. She was also the victim of a plane crash, although hers didn't end up with her being encased in ice for 70 years. Danvers has also been a valuable member of the Avengers. In the comics, we saw her side with Iron Man during the Civil War storyline, but as we all know, this event already played out within the MCU. It's safe to say that in many ways, the Marvel comic book characters differ from their MCU counterparts to varying degrees. We think there's more than enough compelling source material to suggest that Danvers will fill the void left by Rogers in the MCU. We know we can't wait to see what the latest version of Captain Marvel will be like, and how she'll compare to Captain America. But don't think we're letting Bucky Barnes and Steve Wilson off the hook just quite yet. With Captain America gone, these two are going to have to step up in some major ways if the status quo is to be maintained. Even with the help of Captain Marvel, Marvel. In addition, they both would undoubtedly have motivation to see that the legacy of Steve Rogers is carried on. Barnes is a super soldier himself, who might even find some use for Rogers' old shield. In order to move forward, Barnes will have to learn how to forgive himself for his past, the way that Rogers was all too happy to. Falcon, on the other hand, may be able to adjust his morals to more closely mimic those of Captain America. We've seen that one of his flaws is his impatience, and the likelihood of him losing his temper. Rogers was always able to remain calm under pressure and not give in to his basic instincts during a situation. There's definitely a lot Wilson could learn from Rogers, which would make him a more well-rounded character. Rogers has proven to be an indispensable part of the MCU, and it'll be interesting to see how Marvel decides to fill the void left by his departure. Do you think that someone will become the new Captain America, or will other characters simply have to step up in their own ways? Share your predictions with us in the comment section below, and click on the subscribe button for even more great MCU videos from CDR. Thanks for watching.